What do you say, Wednesday morning? Good to see you, everybody. Thank you for joining in, and welcome to the Bill Press Show this Wednesday morning, March 5, with lots to talk about here on Free Speech TV and, of course, on our video stream worldwide, youtube.com/TawkrTV, as long as you spell it the right way, TAWKR-TV. In a kind of weird news conference yesterday, Vladimir Putin, sitting down with reporters, said he didn't invade the Crimea. That was just a humanitarian mission to help the Russian citizens who live in Crimea. And he insisted he has no plans to seize any more territory from the Ukraine. Of course, he didn't say he was pulling troops out of Crimea. But in fact, Putin also insisted that all options are on the table, whatever that means. Meanwhile, do we really think that this is a guy we can trust to return Edward Snowden to the United States? I don't think so. John Kerry, Secretary of State, meanwhile, in Kiev yesterday, showing solidarity with Ukraine's new government and putting his money where his mouth is, showing up with $1 billion in loan guarantees from the United States. Back here at home, President Obama unveiling yesterday his budget for 2015, $3.9 trillion. That's with a T, of course. Democrats will love it because it has new money for job training and for jobs, rebuilding our roads and bridges, for early childhood education, tax breaks for the middle class. Republicans, of course, will hate it because it does raise taxes on the wealthiest of Americans. And finally, how cold is it? It's cold enough that Niagara Falls froze over again for the second time this year, and Washington, D.C. had a 141-year low of 4 degrees. Forget the cold. Stay inside. Stay warm with us. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS Wednesday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your
likes
kids
you.
how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
Line. This is the Bill Press Show.
Vladimir Putin says, we didn't invade the Crimea, we just came to help. This is just a humanitarian mission. Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Ash Wednesday. Hope you survived Mardi Gras. And especially with that big hangover you've got this morning, we are glad to see you and appreciate your getting up early to join us here on your local progressive talk radio station this Wednesday morning, March 5, on Free Speech TV and on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TawkrTV. Reaching out to you from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Damn, it's cold in Washington these days, man. Down to single digits for the most part. Yesterday we had a 140-year low of 4 degrees. Haven't seen that since 1873. I know out in Chicago you're saying BFD. We have that every day, but it was cold for Washington anyhow.
It was cold out, man.
Yeah, but we barrel through here. Nothing stops us. We are here with you to bring you up to date on all the news of the day. Wherever it's happening, we'll tell you what's going on, and you tell us what you think about it. That's the way it goes here on the Bill Press Show. For the next 3 hours, the number to join the conversation, 866-55-PRESS. That's our toll-free number. You can join us on Twitter. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. And if you're not a friend of ours on Facebook already, why the hell not? Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy. Good morning, guys.
Hey.
Good morning.
All right. With Alicia Cruz there on standing by to take your phone calls. And Cyprian Bolding, our videographer. Cameras on? I can't.
Yeah, they're on.
Hello.
They're on.
Hello.
Looking good.
Hello. Anybody here? That's right. All right. Okay. Good. We got it. And good to see you all. Yesterday, I hope you celebrated. Yesterday, for some people, was Mardi Gras, but, let's face it, unless you're in New Orleans, nobody, maybe San Francisco, a little bit.
Is that right? Do they do the Mardi Gras thing?
In the Castro.
Okay.
I think maybe a little bit. I'm not sure. But I know one thing. Everywhere in the United States yesterday, people were celebrating what was really important about yesterday. It was Pancake Day, right? Stop into IHOP.
Free pancakes.
And David Letterman noted last night what an important day this is. Historic.
I want to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care what else is going on. Today is National Pancake Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Have you ever said to yourself, I'm not in the mood for pancakes? No one has ever said that. National Pancake Day and National Waffle Day used to be two separate days. But it was like Lincoln and Washington. They got together and decided to celebrate it on one day. So it's actually Pancake and Waffle Day.
I think that makes sense.
And I'm telling you something, ladies, wait a minute. If you stayed home from work today because it was National Pancake Day, chances are you are the governor of New Jersey.
Oh, Chris Christie, man. Taking it in the chops. Well, now, I must admit, I've never been to IHOP on Pancake Day. So if you go, do you get a choice between how many pancakes do you get?
I can tell you.
And do you get a choice between pancakes?
I have been to IHOP on National Pancake Day
yes.
several years ago. And I can also tell you, I will.
How did I know you had?
I will never go again. We took the kids like 5 years ago.
There must be a line out the door, right?
It's insane.
Yeah, I mean seriously,
there is a line out the door. And you get a stack of pancakes.
Really?
You don't get all you can eat pancakes.
You get little ones?
No, they're
really?
real deal pancakes. It's like 2 big pancakes, regular-sized pancakes.
Yeah.
And
where do you eat them? There aren't enough tables for all those people.
Well, I mean, you wait for a table. That's the thing. You just sit around and you wait.
Oh, I see.
I mean, you sit down at like a regular meal. Oh. And the idea being, we'll give you some pancakes. You order coffee and bacon or eggs or all this other stuff that you want. If you come in and you just order water and pancakes.
You just can't go in and pick up a couple of pancakes and walk out.
No, you can't do that. You have to sit down.
I got it. Okay.
Do you get different toppings on them?
Again,
no, it's just plain.
Can you get waffles? Do you have a choice? Waffles or pancakes? No, really?
It's Pancake Day. You get pancakes.
Well, I think it's a new change. David Letterman was saying now it's National Pancake and Waffle Day.
I think that's wishful thinking on the part of Letterman.
All right. Well, I just want to know. Yeah. Maybe next year we'll all go. Right?
You can count me out. You can count. Been there, done that.
All right. Cyprian and I will go. And the girls.
There you go.
All right. Here we go. Hey, we're very, very excited today. The author of the new book on Edward Snowden, the Snowden Files, Luke Harding, will be in studio with us. Also bounce down the White House and talk to David Jackson from USA Today about the president's big $3.5 trillion budget yesterday. And Karl Frisch will be here from Bullfight Strategies as a friend of Bill Reid, Epstein here from Politico. Lots going up. And finally, it looks like we might get serious about global warming, and we'll tell you why. But first,
this is the Full Court
Peter.
Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Bill, here in Washington, D.C., soon it will be legal to smoke marijuana in your private home. A new measure that passed the D.C. Council yesterday. The Washington Post reporting that this is just one of many new bills loosening marijuana laws all around the country. The D.C. bill will decriminalize marijuana and eliminate jail time for most offenses in favor of fines. In other words, if you get caught
But it's not legalization.
It's not legalization.
Right.
It's decriminalization. So if you get caught possessing up to an ounce of weed, which is a lot of weed, if you get caught up to an ounce, that's going to cost you $25. If you smoke marijuana in public, that would be a misdemeanor with a maximum penalty of $500. But basically, they're saying if you are in your own home and you have weed and you smoke, you're okay. And Vincent Gray said yesterday he intends to sign the measure.
I don't know why they just didn't legalize it, but this is a pretty lenient decriminalization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
goes pretty far.
Yeah, yeah. The fact that they're saying if you've got it, you can smoke at home.
Right.
You know, that's
But are you able to go get it from your garden in the backyard and take it in your house and then smoke it?
That's a different question. I'm not sure what the rules are on growing it, but I mean, I imagine it would be. I mean, it's still illegal.
I have to tell you, as cold as it's been here lately,
if you can get out of your garden,
my pot plant's gone.
Cannot survive the winter.
No, the parsley and the pot.
No greenhouse yet.
It'll grow in 4 degrees, I guess.
No.
Syracuse basketball team is having a rough season. They started the season 25-0. However, last night they dropped their 4th game in 5 games. They lost to Georgia Tech last night, 67-62. Syracuse was an early favorite leading into March Madness, but I mean they've certainly lost a lot of their momentum. So we'll see where they go from here.
Well, I'm glad I haven't filled out my bracket yet.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And a startling revelation from a Reddit user who was saying that he was abroad with his iPhone and his phone died and he didn't have a charger for it. So he just left it in his backpack and he hiked all around Europe. And when he got back, it turned out that his iPhone had recorded all of his movements even though the battery was dead.
Whoa.
Which is something that Apple hadn't talked about before. He uses an Apple iPhone S, and he said he spent 2 weeks there with a dead iPhone, and when he came back, he plugged his phone back in and showed that all of his steps and all of his GPS movement had been recorded. So if your iPhone dies, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not watching you.
It's like the iPhone has like a pacemaker and it keeps going.
Yeah, it just keeps going.
Body dies and the pacemaker keeps going. Good Lord, that's pretty scary. I'm not sorry about that.
Right.
Here we go, 15 minutes after the hour. Yes, indeed, on the climate change front, on the global warming front, you know, we have talked so many times about how serious this is. I mean, we're really not exaggerating. We're really talking about the survival of the planet and us, right? Our survival. When it talks to climate change. And I'm just starting to read Elizabeth Colbert's new book about the 6th extinction. You know, I just hope we come to our senses before we, in effect, commit kind of global suicide by not doing anything about global warming. And we've seen it. Look, it's real. I mean, and the signs of it and the evidence is so overwhelming. It's amazing anybody could doubt what's going on with climate change. I mean, look at the glaciers. Where are they? Look at the polar caps. Where are they? They're gone. Look at all the intense weather patterns that we've seen lately, the extreme record hot temperatures every year. Every year is successively the hottest in history, the hottest. And then at the same time, record colds, these wild swings of temperature. Look at the storms, the wildfires, the increasing number of tornadoes and these killer storms. Everywhere we turn, right, evidence of this, and yet there are still enough climate deniers, particularly in the Congress, to prevent our doing anything. So that, in fact, particularly the United States, but humanity in general has not stepped up and said, this is serious, we have to reverse the trend, we have to stop pouring so many poisons into the air and get real to save what we've got. Well, you wonder, and we wondered, what would it take? What would it take for people to finally take climate change seriously? Maybe we got it. Maybe we finally got there. Not the glaciers, not the polar caps, not the sea levels rising. How about this? Chipotle announced yesterday that because of climate change, it may have to stop making guacamole. No,
anything but that.
Stop the world. I want to get off. But seriously, they're saying that the weather patterns have so impacted the avocado crop, particularly in California, and not just that, but also price of beef and others, that they may have to stop making guacamole and some of their salsa, particularly guacamole they were talking about with the avocados. Here's what Chipotle put out there. Increasing weather volatility or other long-term changes in global weather patterns, including any changes associated with global climate change, could have a significant impact on the price or availability of some of our ingredients. In the event of cost increases, they put this is our annual report released yesterday. In the event of cost increases with respect to one or more of our raw ingredients, we may choose to suspend serving menu items such as guacamole or one or more of our sauces rather than pay the increased cost for those ingredients. And we're talking avocados, baby. Chipotle, they have 288 restaurants in California alone. By the way, could I say as a tangent, I like guacamole.
Sure.
Wait a minute, I love guacamole, but I mean, I love Chipotle is what I meant to say. They're a really good chain. It's good. It's fresh. You kind of make your own. You know, you walk down the line, tell them what you want. The burrito bowl, I think, is outstanding. And there's a Chipotle right down the street from us. No, I've been in them many times. The Chipotle experience, as they call it. So they're a damn good chain. 288 of them in California, 148 in Ohio, right?
Wow.
And they're saying, but they use, get this, 97,000 pounds of avocado every day.
Wow.
35.4 million pounds of avocados every year.
Wow.
And they're looking at, because of the drought in California, for example, a 40% drop in the avocado crop. So they're going to be that much more expensive, right? That's what they're saying. And it's all because of global warming. And they're just saying we're not going to be able to keep it up anymore. All right, people. Is that enough to wake you up?
Is that enough to demand?
Is that enough to get this damn Jim Inhofe, who's the #1 climate denier in the United States Senate? I bet he likes some guacamole. You know?
I hope so. I mean, he is an American after all.
Comes from Oklahoma. Damn, you know. So what? Seriously, we can kind of joke about, but this is serious. When it comes to changes in diet and our favorite foods, and we can no longer afford them, do you think people might finally say, we ought to do something about climate change? Is this what it will take? 866-55-FRESH. Let's talk about it here. I wish I had some guacamole right now. Is there any place nearby we could do a little run? Take your calls anyhow, with or without guacamole.
This is the Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine, Virginia Tech,
Tucson,
Aurora,
Fort Hood, Oak Creek,
Newtown.
Newtown,
Newtown.
Newtown.
How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
Hey friends, do you realize that heart disease kills more Americans every year than all forms of cancer combined? So when you donate to the American Heart Association, you're contributing to life-saving research with every dollar. You can make your donation today through the Pop Money personal payment service. All you do is download the app or go online to popmoney.com. Sign up to send your donation to jessica.gramillion@heart.org. Jessica.gramillion@heart.org. Here's the best part. The 95-cent fee is assessed to you, the sender, regardless of how much money you contribute. That means that 100% of your donation goes to support the ongoing research to help save lives across America. No fees are paid by the American Heart Association, getting more bang for your buck. And of course, terms and conditions apply.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, 25 minutes after the hour. Chipotle shaking things up yesterday, saying basically, we got a choice, okay? We are either going to fix the climate or do away with guacamole. All right, there's your choice, all right? You can't have it both ways. Either you get the guac or you get the heat, right? Right. So which is it going to be?
I mean, good for them for pointing that out. I mean, I don't know that there are a lot of companies the size and has the reach as Chipotle that have made an argument for getting something done on climate change specifically.
Well, but also, that it doesn't just impact them, right?
Right.
I mean, obviously, every chain.
Right.
And many of our food products will be affected by this, the availability of them, the quality of them, and particularly the cost, right? This is a real impact, real serious. This hits home, and I would hope that more restaurants and more businesses would just get up and say, hey, from just an economic point of view, we have to do this, not just an environmental point of view. Bill is down in Hereford, Texas. Hello, Bill. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. What do you think?
Well, if we want to get serious about this global climate change, we need to get on this hydrogen economy.
Hydrogen economy?
Yeah, it could be made with water electrolysis, and the cars are coming out. Hyundai's got one out now. They're doing it pretty big in California.
Yeah, you know what? I have actually, there was one in Washington not so long ago that they really do. I mean, that technology exists, right? They just don't have the cars available, I guess, right now that you can buy.
They got them in California. I drove a General Motors fuel cell car.
Is that right?
Two years ago in Ohio.
Now,
and I'm making hydrogen on my farm here in Hereford, and it's real simple.
What do you make it from?
Rainwater and electricity from a wind turbine, no pollution.
Is that right? Damn, Bill, you ought to market that. I mean, get out there and let us know.
Well, I'm working with a guy that built this thing in Englewood, Ohio.
Yeah.
And he's got it on the market. It's all available. We just can't get nobody behind it.
All right, Bill. Well, you know what? I'm glad you let us know about it, and we'll put the word out there. And I mean, you got a farmer like Bill who's into it.
I'm telling you, man.
Then why can't why doesn't the United States Congress get it? We'll send Jim Inhofe down to Hereford, Texas. Dr.
This is
Bill.
the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Minutes after the hour now that we've solved the problems of climate change, moving on to the most serious international crisis at the moment, which of course continues to be the Ukraine. President Obama speaking about it yesterday, as well as Secretary of State John Kerry. Just during our show yesterday morning, you'll remember Vladimir Putin met with reporters, a very strange kind of news conference, where he said, no, we did not invade Crimea. We just sent some troops in order to protect the Russian population of Crimea and our Russian troops in Crimea and the Russian naval base in Crimea. And we have no intentions of seizing any more territory. He says he described it as a humanitarian mission. And he said defiantly, if the United States or anybody else puts sanctions against us, we will respond accordingly. And in fact, he said they could get along without any help from the United States at all anyhow. So he basically didn't give a damn. He insists that everything he's doing is perfectly legal. President Obama yesterday said, our lawyers don't agree with that.
A sovereign people and independent people are able to make their own decisions about their own lives. And Mr. Putin can throw a lot of words out there, but the facts on the ground indicate that right now he's not abiding by that principle.
And the president said there is something that Congress can do, and they ought to do it right away.
Don't doubt the bipartisan concern that's been expressed about the situation in the Ukraine. There is something immediately Congress can do to help us, and that is to help finance the economic package that can stabilize the economy in Ukraine, help to make sure that fair and free elections take place very soon.
Meanwhile, the president sent Secretary of State John Kerry to Kiev to show support for the new government of Ukraine. The first thing he did, he went out and met with protesters, met with people in the square where the protests had taken place. Later in a news conference, he praised those who had risen up to demand that the Ukrainian government follow up with their desires to be more part of the West than of Russia. And when Yanukovych reversed course instead and said, no, we're not going to be part of the EU. We're not going to trade with the West. We want to still be part of Vladimir Putin's Eurasian coalition. That's when the protests started. And again, Secretary of State John Kerry praising those who for months went out in the streets and brought about this change.
These brave Ukrainians took to the streets in order to stand peacefully against tyranny and to demand democracy.
And they brought about that change. They effected that change, and John Kerry was there to express again his support for the new government of Ukraine.
The United States reaffirms our commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity according to international law.
And by the way, the president also said yesterday, which I found a little strange, he said his actual words was, there is a strong belief that Russia's action is violating international law. Hello, strong belief? Hello, yes, they are violating international law. You can't invade another country and take part of its territory and not violate international law. I mean, I found that a strange choice of words. The president's a constitutional scholar. I mean, he knows. Yeah, right? There it is. Looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a duck.
It's a duck.
Right. Our comments yesterday that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton compared the invasion of Crimea to the Nazis and Hitler seizing Poland. She's gotten some flack over that. I think it's a little fetched, a little far-fetched, a little extreme. First of all, we've talked about this before. I hate it when anybody uses the Hitler-Nazi analogy. And there's been nothing like what they have done, and certainly this doesn't come. Look, I'm not I'm not defending what Putin did, but Crimea is right next door. There are the Russian population. There are probably more Russians than Ukrainians in Crimea. If you took a vote right now in Crimea as to what the people there want to happen, Russia would win overwhelmingly. They speak the Russian language there, so. Anyhow, I'm just saying not the same as Nazi seizing Poland. Still not right, however. And then, of course, as we discussed yesterday, the Republicans just see this as, rather than blaming Putin for what happened, Republicans see this as an opportunity to blame President Obama for something, and basically saying that he invited Vladimir Putin, to invade Crimea, when he did not bomb Syria after they used chemical weapons. And, of course, and Lindsey Graham is the one who has put this latest theory out there, that it was what happened in Benghazi that told Vladimir Putin that he could invade Crimea and President Obama would do nothing. Follow that logic, right? Terrorists attack our consulate in Benghazi. It's so remote, there's no way we can get, as has been proven over and over again, no way we could get military relief there from our nearest bases. 4 people were killed, but because that happened, Vladimir Putin saw a green light to invade Crimea. That is so far-fetched. I just can't believe it. But that's what Lindsey Graham is putting out there. Again, it's blame Obama for anything.
I really don't understand these lawmakers, Republican lawmakers, who should know better. You know, I mean, when did Democrats come out and bash George Bush for something that happened in some part of the world that he had nothing to do with?
Well, as a matter of fact, these are the same. And John McCain, of course, has been he and Lindsey Graham. Whatever one says, the other one always says the same thing, right? I mean, so they're the team. Right. And McCain's been saying the same stuff. Neither one of them did anything in 2008 when Russia, the last time they invaded another country is when they invaded Georgia. They invaded Georgia. George Bush didn't use military force against them. George Bush condemned it, but he didn't do anything. Did not do anything. They didn't accuse George Bush of giving Putin the green light to invade Georgia, and they didn't attack him for being a weak president because Putin did something, invaded another country. But now when Obama's in there, it's a totally different story.
Right.
The same thing, I said this yesterday. They didn't accuse George Bush of being a weak president who invites aggression, to use Lindsey Graham's words, when we were attacked on September 11, 2001. That happened on George Bush's watch. Did al-Qaeda attack us because we had a weak president that invited aggression? I don't think so. And no Democrats ever said it at the time. We blamed al-Qaeda. We blamed Putin in 2008. We blame Putin today. You don't blame President Obama for it. But that's just one of the big problems that the president's got on his plate these days. The president also has the challenge of how to keep this economy going, and he made his best effort at that, put forth his best effort at that yesterday with the new budget for 2015. David Jackson at the White House covers a whole range of issues that the president is involved with, and he will join us in our next segment. From the White House for USA Today, David Jackson. Coming up next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
13 minutes now before the top of the hour on this Wednesday morning, March 5. President Obama going on the road again today, and part of a busy week at the White House with foreign visitors, a big budget, and an international crisis to deal with. Keeps a guy like David Jackson hopping from one issue to another. David Jackson covers the White House for USA Today, joining us on our news line this morning. Hello, David.
Yeah, hello, Bill.
What's the president up to today? Going hopping on Air Force One to Hartford, Connecticut, right?
Hartford, yeah. There's going to be some time in New England today. He's going to Connecticut to follow up on his budget proposal from yesterday. He's going to be speaking at Central Connecticut State, which I believe is in New Britain. And while he's going to be talking about the budget, he's also going to be focusing particularly on increasing the minimum wage. That's going to be his big domestic issue at least for the short term. And he's going to be joined by 4 governors from up there. So it's a minimum wage hit, basically.
Right. And Governor Malloy from Connecticut has been way out in front on increasing the minimum wage in Connecticut. So it makes sense, right?
Yeah, very much so. And of course, Malloy also had that impromptu debate with Bobby Jindal in the White House, in the White House on the White House driveway a couple of weeks ago. So he's in very good stead with the White House after that. But after the event, after the budget event in Connecticut, Obama's going to be up in Boston later today to do a couple of DNC fundraisers. It's fundraising time for the president as well.
Oh, yeah, indeed. So yesterday he unveiled this $3.9 trillion budget. Hard to keep up with a document like that, but what are the highlights?
Basically, it's like most budgets, like all budgets really of recent years, it's kind of dead on arrival. It's more of a political document than anything, but it's more of a less democratic wish list. It has much more spending for education, for job training, and for infrastructure, and it resurrects the president's ideas for increasing taxes on the wealthy. It's basically a document that Democrats can run on if they choose to in the fall.
And when it comes up to the Congress and is immediately shredded, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
Well, of course, the House Republicans won't approve it in any event. They want lower taxes and less regulations, and they would even have a tough time in the Senate when you get right down to it because of all the vulnerable Democrats who are in the Senate. So
I thought it was strange that the president chose to unveil the budget at an elementary school yesterday.
Well, he wanted to spotlight the education spending in it. If you'll notice, they kind of wanted to downplay the entire budget, partly because of what we're talking about.
I bet those first graders were really excited, right?
Well, it was a kid, but they were writing real sentences there in pre-K. It was pre-K, which is another part of the budget. Right? He wants to expand pre-K. So I don't know. Maybe they liked it. I'm sure they know who the president is. Who knows?
When the president comes to school, it doesn't matter what he's talking about.
Right. And more than a few president's critics, thanks to Twitter, were able to spotlight the fact that he was talking about a very serious issue, Ukraine, while standing in an elementary school classroom. So that the optics weren't the greatest yesterday.
Right. The visit with, I wasn't sure because of the snow it was actually going to happen, but Prime Minister Netanyahu got a little buzz that visit this week, huh?
Yes, and he spent almost 3 hours at the White House, and it was pretty blunt talk from what I understand. President Obama wants Israel to sign off on this framework for peace that Secretary Kerry is promoting, and he also wants a little more buy-in on the Iran negotiations, and basically Netanyahu told him no, and then went out yesterday to APEC and gave some of his reasons. So I think there's still a lot of friction there.
It's is it unusual for the president not to address APEC? He's in town, right?
No, it's not unusual.
Nor
but
the vice president, so far as I know. Right.
I know. I don't know how much.
Kerry did. Of course,
yeah, I was going to say Kerry was the one, and he had to squeeze it in because he was going to Ukraine. And it's not particularly unusual. I would say presidents go there every 2 or 3 years. It's been a while for Obama. I was a little surprised he didn't do it this year because I heard he would earlier. I don't know what happened to the schedule, but I wouldn't say it's unusual, but it's probably something you need to tend to.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about Russia. John Kerry went there yesterday.
Right.
The president was quick to condemn. He tried to talk Putin out of it and didn't succeed. But he doesn't have a lot of options, does he, David?
No, not at all. Just the option of public pressure and the hope that, the Russian markets have really tanked in recent days, and polls show that the Russian people aren't real happy about what's going on. So they've got to hope that some of that will get to Putin. But now the only thing they're doing is they're basically offering what they call an exit ramp to Putin. They're trying to persuade him to, hey, look, pull your troops back to the bases you've already got in Ukraine. Abide by the limits that have been there for years about how many Russian troops can be in Ukraine. And we'll send in international monitors to protect Russian-speaking people in Crimea. I mean, I guess the deal that Obama and Kerry are advancing, and they just hope that it gives Putin a way out. From their standpoint, they think Putin's in trouble and he's looking for a way out, and they're trying to provide one. But who knows what Putin thinks?
But, I mean, nobody's talking about sending in American troops.
No, not at all. Not at all. That's not even the Republicans. That's not even an option. It's all diplomatic suasion at this point.
And even on sanctions, I was surprised to see that Germany and the UK and the Netherlands and others said that they weren't necessarily ready for sanctions against Russia.
I know that is a little bit of a surprise, but Europe depends a lot on Russia for their energy supplies, so it's being a lot tougher. In fact, last night the White House got the word that the sanctions aren't coming anytime soon.
Is that right?
Yeah, there's a sign that they're having a few difficulties there.
Well, and without Europe, I mean, there's no way we can apply enough pressure from sanctions alone, right? To get.
There's really nothing we can do about Putin. If he wants to stay in Crimea, he can, but they're hoping to persuade him otherwise.
I was going to ask you whether that might be the eventual outcome. I saw something somebody was suggesting this morning that for some of the European countries, they might be happy with that solution. Give him the Crimea as long as he doesn't take anything else.
Well, there's some of that. In Georgia, he split off 2 provinces when he invaded Georgia 6 years ago, so something similar could happen this time around. Of course, that wouldn't please the Ukrainians none too much, so
right.
you have problems on the other side there. So it's a tricky situation.
Finally, on that point, I was surprised yesterday when the president used the phrase, there is a strong belief that Putin has violated international law.
Yeah, it was a strange phrase. Talking about Putin's lawyers, that was a strange formulation.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear. He invaded another country, right? I mean,
I guess, but as you mentioned, Europe's been pretty muted about that, so maybe that was a deference to the European allies. He was taking a softer tone when it comes to accusing Putin of violating international law. But also, I mean, don't forget President Obama was a lawyer and a law professor, so it was a very professorial tone yesterday on that analysis.
All right. So are you dealing with this cold weather okay, David?
No, I think so. I live downtown. How about you?
No, listen, I'm suffering, man.
You California guys just can't handle
it, man. I have a whole block to walk every morning when it's 4 degrees,
Poor guy.
Yeah.
I think it's going to warm up here in the next couple of days.
I know. You South Carolinians, we're a little worried about you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I feel your pain.
All right.
David.
Hey, we'll see you a little bit later. Thank you, David.
Good luck.
David Jackson at the White House for USA Today, usatoday.com.
This is the Bill Press Show.
For more than 18 months, the members of AFSCME 3299 have been working to secure a new contract with the University of California. With workplace injuries at UC skyrocketing and government fines related to safety deficiencies at UC hospitals skyrocketing, Local 3299's top priority has been safe staffing at the workplace.
We've been short of people for the last 5 years. They're stretching us thin, which the students are suffering, the faculty suffering, and the patients are suffering.
While UC administrators have granted these standards to other UC workers, they have refused to make similar accommodations for AFSCME represented workers who perform the most physically demanding labor at UC.
It takes a whole team to take care of the patient. It's not just the RN and it's not just the doctor. The nurses were able to win a great contract, and AFSCME workers, the patient care workers and service workers, they're part of the team and they deserve that same fair contract too.
We take pride into working for the university, and we feel like the university doesn't value the work that we do.
But the second-class treatment of AFSCME workers doesn't end at safety and staffing. On wages, benefits, and other issues, UC refuses to offer AFSCME 3299 members the same respect they afford their other workers.
I have 3 jobs because what the university pays me is just not enough to make a living for my family and myself.
99% of service workers in the UC system make so little money that they're eligible for at least some form of public assistance. At the same time, the number of executives in the UC system that have crossed over into making at least $250,000 a year has more than doubled since 2008.
The University of California has long been a beacon of hope and progress for those struggling for dignity and fairness. With such a proud history, it is disturbing to see the leadership of the university treat its lowest paid workers like second-class citizens.
All workers at the university deserve equal treatment.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Congressman Peter Welsh in the next at the top of the next hour here, and then Luke Harding from The Guardian, who is the author of the books, The Snowden Files. Peter?
We've talked a lot about the Comcast-Time Warner merger and why it may or may not be a good idea. One person who's not so sure that it's a good idea is Senator Al Franken. He wrote a letter to the FCC, and he, quote his letter, he said, Comcast has a history of breaching its legal obligations to consumers, and said that it should be highly scrutinized. So he's clearly has some concerns.
He's been red hot on this issue. I don't know anybody else who's been out in front of this issue or cares as much about it as Al Franken does. A very, very big fighter on behalf of consumers.
This
Al Franken,
is the
good for
Bill
him.
Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
What do you say Wednesday morning? Good to see you, everybody. Thank you for joining in, and welcome to the Bill Press Show this Wednesday morning, March 5, with lots to talk about here on Free Speech TV and, of course, on our video stream worldwide, youtube.com/TawkrTV, as long as you spell it the right way, TAWKRTV. In a kind of weird news conference yesterday, Vladimir Putin, sitting down with reporters, said he didn't invade the Crimea. That was just a humanitarian mission to help the Russian citizens who live in Crimea. And he insisted he has no plans to seize any more territory from the Ukraine. Of course, he didn't say he was pulling troops out of Crimea. But in fact, Putin also insisted that all options are on the table, whatever that means. Meanwhile, do we really think that this is a guy we can trust to return Edward Snowden to the United States? I don't think so. John Kerry, Secretary of State, meanwhile, in Kiev yesterday, showing solidarity with Ukraine's new government and putting his money where his mouth is, showing up with $1 billion in loan guarantees from the United States. Back here at home, President Obama unveiling yesterday his budget for 2015, $3.9 trillion. That's with a T, of course. Democrats will love it because it has new money for job training and for jobs, rebuilding our roads and bridges, for early childhood education, tax breaks for the middle class. Republicans, of course, will hate it because it does raise taxes on the wealthiest of Americans. And finally, how cold is it? It's cold enough that Niagara Falls froze over again for the second time this year, and Washington, D.C. had a 141-year low of 4 degrees. Forget the cold. Stay inside. Stay warm with us. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS Wednesday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Oh, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look. Your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
So today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Change the world.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Vladimir Putin says, we did not invade Crimea. We just went in to help the people out a little bit. It was a humanitarian mission. Oh, that explains it, I guess. So we have to thank him for helping the people of Ukraine. He lives on another planet. Good morning, everybody. What do you say? It is Wednesday, March 5. Great to see you today. We are coming to you live from our nation's capital, bringing you the news of the day and, of course, taking your calls at 866-55-PRESS. We are there with you and for you on your local progressive talk radio station. We are there with you and for you on Free Speech TV. If you've got a satellite dish on DirecTV. And, of course, we are there with you worldwide on our video stream at TawkrTV, TAWKR-TV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Just down the street is where we're located, just down the street from the United States Capitol building, which means, every once in a while, some member of Congress or the Senate just sort of straggles in on his way to work. Congressman Peter Welsh made it this morning from Vermont, and Congressman, it's good to see you.
Yeah, is this where I am? Where am I?
You stopped in for a cup of coffee.
I did. Pastries downstairs. This is a good place.
Good to see you. It's
good to be here.
It's been a while, and you've been busy, I know, down in Colombia, as you were telling us, with the Aspen Institute.
That's
correct?
right, and with your friend Sam Farr, and it was a wonderful conference on Latin America and Central America.
If you're traveling in Colombia with Congressman Sam Farr, who was there in the Peace Corps,
that's right.
You cannot have a better guest or a guest or a guide, I guess.
Well, you could. It's amazing what dedication he has to the Peace Corps, and he still has lots of friends down there. We met some of the Peace Corps volunteers, and he's a real proponent, but made me and others a real proponent too. The importance of the Peace Corps, and that's wonderful diplomacy, and a lot of those folks in the Peace Corps go on to very good careers in public service, and they anchor us in a sensible foreign policy. So, Sam's done a lot of good work, and the Peace Corps has done tremendous work.
Absolutely. Continues to do so. I'm always impressed with people that I meet who say they start out in the Peace Corps.
Yeah,
Chris
true.
Dodd was there, Ellen Tauscher, I believe, John Garamendi, Sam Farr.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. No, and that's exactly right. They started there, and they never lose that practical idealism.
Mm-hmm.
And in this business and the business of life, it kind of chips away, and the people you admire are the ones who are in it as a marathon. In the setbacks, you got to have heart to be in politics. And Sam and John and George, Miller, Chris Dodd. These are all wonderful people who made major contributions and still are.
You join our team again this morning, of course, Peter Ogburn and Lisa Murphy.
Good morning.
With Alicia Cruz there, ready to take your phone calls at 866-55-PRESS, and, of course, our videographer, Cyprian Bolding, keeping us looking good on Free Speech and on TawkrTV. And, of course, the big issue of the day, Congressman, I know you're going to be dealing with a vote to send some more aid to Ukraine. By the way, news just broke that the European Union committed this morning to $15 billion in aid to Ukraine. They're stepping up to the plate, just like John Kerry did yesterday. Putin is the mysterious character in the middle of all of this, who comes off this very successful Olympics with all the goodwill that he built up with the Olympics, and then trashes it in less than a week by invading Crimea.
In an instant. That's right.
David Letterman had some fun with Mr. Putin last night.
Russia, as you probably know by now, over the weekend decided, well, the Olympics are done, what can we do? So they invaded Crimea, and that the evil Russian President Vladimir Putin is saying that he has no plans to annex the territory. And I thought, well, that's good enough for me. But he says, not an invasion. We just went into Crimea to round up the stray dogs. That's what he said.
It is amazing with that straight face yesterday. He just said, this is not an invasion, a humanitarian mission. Right?
Well, it's pretty bizarre. And, of course, they're giving sanctuary to the former, quote, president, that kleptocrat.
Yeah. Right.
There really is good news here. I mean, it's really dangerous, obviously, with the invasion of Crimea. But, there's an opportunity here for the pro-Western desires of the vast majority of the Ukrainian people now to be realized. This whole episode started when the president rejected what had been an agreement with the European Union where there were going to be more Western ties, and which really is a symbol for more democratic participation for Ukrainian people, and then moved towards Russia. And the street protest with the tragic loss of life was just a manifestation of this enormous democratic desire on the part of everyday Ukrainian people. And with the aid that the European Union is going to provide, and I hope the United States will provide, it's really going to give a boost to a democratic rising in the Ukraine. So we should provide aid. We should consider sanctions. But there's practical problems on that, and I am relieved that people are not talking about the use of force here.
Right, which would just be a non-starter, right? But the president yesterday and the day before said he was counting on Congress to provide some assistance to Ukraine. I mean, that should be a no-brainer, I would think, right?
It really should. What we're seeing here is a continuation of the consequences of the collapse of the Soviet Union. That didn't just happen the day the wall went down. I mean, it unleashed enormous forces, some of them towards democracy, some of them towards resistance and reaction. And it's been happening for many years since the wall went down. But in the Ukraine, the pro-Soviet folks were in power. They were using it to basically steal the country blind. There was immense poverty that was politically inflicted, largely because of the actions of the ruling class, a real small elite. And that's been cracked. So Ukraine now has a real opportunity, basically, to be its own boss. The people have an opportunity to succeed. And this is a critical moment for the West working together to provide some help.
Is there... It's not going to be easy, I would think, to get Putin out of Crimea. Is it possible even to do so?
Well, the question is whether the price that Putin experiences him paying is going to be one that makes him back off. But I think it is going to be really tough, and I think it's important for us to be supporting the aspirations of Ukrainian people, but being really hard-nosed and hard-headed about the steps we take and the tactics we take so that we don't make a bad situation worse. And in the Crimea, of course, that's where the Russian Baltic Fleet is. So they've got a huge base there, which obviously, aside from Putin being Putin, rootin' tootin' Putin, there's an interest there that the Russians are going to want to protect. So is there a way where we can get them to back off? The Crimea does belong to Ukraine and make progress.
What is your, the criticism from Republicans has been loud and fierce against, they're not blaming Putin for this, they're blaming President Obama, right?
Right.
I mean, your colleague, Mike Rogers, head of the House Intelligence Committee, has said, well, Putin's playing chess and Obama's playing marbles, right? Lindsey Graham says that we have a weak president who invites aggression. So is this Obama's fault?
Well, is it Obama's fault that we had bad weather in Washington?
Yes,
I think it was. I've got sources that tell me that it definitely was. There's always a political element. And in my view, when you've got Republican leaders who have real responsibility, basically using this as an opportunity to do the blame game, it really kind of is stupid. No, I don't think it's not. It's not Obama's fault. And what do you do and how do you do it is a practical question. It's always the default position, oftentimes of the opposition, to talk tough. Even though what they say is pretty naive. I mean, we do have to be hard-headed. But what does Mr. Rogers think we should do? Drop the big one now? Should we send in the Sixth Fleet? Should we have boots on the ground? I mean, if you ask that person who's talking tough, the next question, and the answer is usually to do what the president is suggesting we do.
Exactly. In fact, in every one of those cases with McCain or Lindsey Graham or Mike Rogers, those have been the loudest. The next thing they say is, oh, no. No troops.
Right.
Oh, no. no bombs. Oh, maybe sanctions and maybe pulling out of the G8. All the stuff the president is, in fact, doing and talking about.
That's
right.
And
so
it makes sense, to put politics aside a little bit when what you're talking about has real consequences. By the way, the real condemnation of this by the United States, by Secretary Kerry, and by European allies does have, this is going to have an effect on Putin. He's not going to say it right away. But look at how much he did try to use the Sochi Olympics as a way to burnish the image of Russia. And they got some credit for that, and now they blew it. So he's susceptible, even if he doesn't display it, to the condemnation of the EU and the United States. And the saber-rattling talk, I think, is always dangerous because it is volatile. I mean, Russia does have some interest there, and they've got a historical connection to the Crimea that's much more significant than it has been even to Ukraine. So it's a dangerous situation, and we want to support democracy. We want to support international law, which I do believe Russia has violated, but we don't want to get into a shooting war.
We are talking with Congressman Peter Welsh from Vermont, the sole member of Congress from Vermont. You can join the conversation anytime at 866-55-PRESS. So yesterday, the president unveiled, Congressman, a $3.9 trillion budget for 2015. As with most presidents' budgets, it comes up to Congress and then it's just torn to shreds, right? And
that's right.
But overall, the budget is being presented as kind of a wish list for Democrats. Do you see it that way? I mean, you've had a chance to look at least at the in broad.
Well, here's what I'd say is that it's the post crisis budget. It's the first one we've had.
Right.
5 years ago, the stock market was at its low. It's tripled in value since then. Now, the dilemma is that that's good for folks who have a fair amount of money in the stock market. But for everyday folks who punch a clock or get a salary, their wages are flat. They haven't come up. And what this budget reflects is the president's focus, and I think it's absolutely the right one, on trying to build up the middle class. So there is money in there for education, for preschool. There is money on environmental protection. He doesn't
and
propose...
for jobs, infrastructure,
and for jobs,
building
and
roads.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
And how is it that in this country that we're letting our roads and our bridges fall apart? We're not extending broadband as aggressively as we need to. And the president's saying this is not good for us. So in that sense, I think it is what we need. I mean, when it's characterized in, I think, a disparaging way as, quote, a wish list, you know what? America should fix its roads.
Yeah.
And why is it that is a partisan debate, okay? America should educate its young people. It did not used to be. And kids should be going to college without having to graduate with the equivalent of a mortgage. I mean, this isn't good for the long-term health of this country. So this budget finally, I think, focuses on where we need to make our investments. And by the way, the deficit is down.
Yes.
A few years ago, it was 10% of the gross domestic product. It's down to about 3%. And we do have challenges on making entitlements sustainable for the future, and we can work together on a defense budget and bring that down and keep the country secure. But we've got to invest in our future.
Now, you have legislation affected that would change the budget and provide us some more information, correct?
Right, I do. Intelligence. We have a black budget intelligence budget. I mean, a black box. No one knows what it is. When the president submits
You mean how much money is there?
There's 16 different intelligence agencies built. There's the big ones that you know about, CIA, NSA, Defense Intelligence. But there's 13 more. And in every case, there's not a public statement about the top line spending request for each one of those 16 intelligence agencies. And the 9/11 Commission and Lee Hamilton, who is enormously respected, says if you're going to have oversight, the beginning of any kind of oversight on the intelligence budget, you've got to have disclosure on how much it is they're asking for, and it's billions and billions. And I like to make the analogy, just think if you had 16 different governmental agencies administering the food stamp program, and you didn't know how much they were spending, and you couldn't even ask, and you didn't know if they were duplicating effort, whether they were cooperating, whether they were wasting money. So, I think we've got to have more transparency in the intelligence area. Basically, we have a situation where it's unlimited money and non-existent oversight.
So your bill would say you need to know what each of these agencies
the top line number.
Yeah.
And I'm on that with Cynthia Lummis from Wyoming, and she's a tremendous member. She's a Tea Party person with a lot of common sense, and this legislation has about 70 co-sponsors, and it ranges from very liberal to very conservative. And the basic unifying factor is, hey, this is taxpayer money. How much are we asking them to fork over for these intel budgets, and are we getting our money's worth?
One would think that members of Congress would have that information available, would not have to introduce legislation to get it, right? It ought to come with the territory. Just one of the good things Congressman Peter Welsh is working on here. Again, your questions and comments always welcome at 866-55-PRESS on this Wednesday morning. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where that ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.
Columbine.
Virginia Tech.
Tucson.
Aurora.
Fort Hood. Oak Creek.
Newtown.
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 How many more?
How many more? How many more colleges? How many more classrooms?
How many more movie theaters?
How many more houses of faith?
How many more shopping malls?
How many more street corners?
How many more?
How many more?
Enough.
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 Demand a plan.
Right now. As a mom.
As a dad. As a friend. As a husband.
As a wife.
As an American.
As an American.
As an American.
As a human being.
For the children of Sandy Hook.
Demand a plan. No more lists of names. It's not too soon.
It's too late.
Now is the time.
Before we all know someone who loved someone on that list.
No more lists.
No more.
Who they might have been. No more.
If we had just done something yesterday. It's time.
We can do better than this.
We can do better than this.
It's time.
It's time.
It's time for our leaders to act.
Demand a plan. Right now.
Right now.
You! Demand it!
Enough.
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 None of us would want to be told we can't marry the person we love. As Americans, we believe in freedom. That's what I fought for as a Marine, and that's what we believe in as Republicans. Freedom means freedom for everyone. I didn't used to understand the importance of same-sex marriage, but after learning my brother was gay, I wanted the same rights for him. He was the best man at my wedding, and I want to be the best man at his. It's only fair that Calvin should have the freedom to marry the person he loves, too.
It's time for marriage.
Hey friends, do you realize that heart disease kills more Americans every year than all forms of cancer combined? So when you donate to the American Heart Association, you're contributing to life-saving research with every dollar. You can make your donation today through the Pop Money personal payment service. All you do is download the app or go online to popmoney.com. Sign up to send your donation to jessica.gramillion@heart.org. Jessica.gramillion@heart.org. Here's the best part. The 95-cent fee is assessed to you, the sender, regardless of how much money you contribute. That means that 100% of your donation goes to support the ongoing research to help save lives across America. No fees are paid by the American Heart Association, getting more bang for your buck. And of course, terms and conditions apply.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Here we are, 26 minutes after the hour. The latest on Edward Snowden in the next segment, next half hour, from Luke Harding with The Guardian, who's author of the book, The Snowden Files. Very excited about that. Congressman Peter Welsh is here with us from Vermont this half hour. And Congressman, you mentioned you were down in Colombia with Sam Farr, Congressman Sam Farr. And here's one of his constituents from Monterey, California, Ronald. Hey, Ronald, welcome to the program. Good morning.
Yes, hi, you guys. I like you guys, but we really should be having a little more Peace Corps talk. And with all the mess that we did in Syria and all the mess that we did in Libya, you know, we have depleted uranium all over Libya. I just heard from, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
The Joyce Riley show. You guys ever listen to Joyce Riley?
Sorry, no.
Okay, well, anyway, people calling in from Libya saying there's depleted uranium all over Libya.
Okay.
Syria's a mess, Afghanistan's a mess, Iraq's a mess, and now we're putting all our bluster around Ukraine and Crimea. To me, it's the same thing as if Putin would come and send troops or send agitators to Texas and help Texas withdraw from the U.S.
All right. Good morning, Ronald. So, for whatever it's worth, Congressman, there you go.
Well, thank you. And there is depleted uranium. I mean, you're right about that. But you know, the good news here is that we're not in Iraq. We're coming home from Afghanistan. The president showed, in my view, great restraint on Syria. I mean, that is an incredible tragedy. But couldn't we micromanage the outcome of that? I don't think so.
Right. And you know, the idea, as Lindsey Graham and some others have put forth, that if only we had bombed Syria, then Putin would not have felt free to invade Crimea. It's just insane.
Well, we got to get David Letterman to give the right response on that.
I think he makes more sense than Lindsey Graham and John McCain do on this issue. Hey, Congressman, it's really good to see you, and our best to the good people of Vermont, and come back and see us again soon.
Thank you.
And you know where we are? Right down the street, and we got pretty good coffee, too.
Great coffee.
All right. Back and talk Edward Snowden with Luke Harding from The Guardian. Thanks, Congressman.
Thanks. This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the area.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Same time next week?
Well, of course.
Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
It's 33 minutes after the hour. Here we go. This Wednesday, March 5, coming to you all across this great land of ours on your local progressive talk radio station and on Free Speech TV, and coming to you worldwide on our video stream, of course, at youtube.com/Tawker, TAWKR-TV. Edward Snowden, will we ever recognize him as the whistleblower that he is and stop treating him as a criminal? We'll get some insights now. Very excited to welcome in the studio the author of the, I think it's the only book out about Edward Snowden and his contribution to our knowledge of what our government is up to, not necessarily good stuff. Luke Harding is the author of the Snowden Files, a correspondent for The Guardian. Luke, in on the beginning of this story, and now brought this book to us. Good to see you.
Bill, it's great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming in. I want to talk Edward Snowden, but first, your previous book, I don't know if it was your first book or not, was Mafia State. You were based in Moscow for The Guardian.
I was there for 4 years, from 2007 to 2011, when Vladimir Putin, the man in the news, kicked me out. I was expelled from the country, basically the first Western correspondent to be thrown out of Russia since the Cold War.
What did you do to get thrown out of Russia?
I wrote stories that annoyed the Kremlin. For example, about Putin's money, which everyone knows he's extremely wealthy, but it's a taboo. You're not supposed to investigate that. Travel to the Caucasus, which is another hotspot,
Right.
and sort of probe top-level corruption. And eventually I was, when I flew back to Moscow, having done a book on WikiLeaks, I was stopped at the airport, put in a cell, my visa cancelled and deported.
Good Lord. It's good
so that was the end of my the end of my wonderful career in Russia.
Yeah, it's good that you didn't end up in that KGB prison that Vladimir Putin probably knows the inside of.
I was actually interviewed there. I was interrogated over a story I wrote by members of the FSB, which is the successor agency to the KGB, and the guys who are highly active now in Crimea.
So did it surprise you? Were you ever in the Ukraine or Crimea?
I was. I covered Ukraine. I covered Crimea. I visited some years ago where this plan was being actively discussed, that Russia would come in, seize Crimea, raise a flag in Sevastopol, the kind of port city where Russia has its fleet. And I kind of wrote this.
So this has been like in the works for a long time?
Well, after the war in Georgia, there was a lot of discussion that maybe Ukraine was next.
Yeah.
But I think it was a scenario, and at the time I sort of wrote this, I thought it was 20% that it would happen, 80% it wouldn't, and of course It just has happened.
Wow. So it didn't really then surprise you that Putin would do this?
It didn't surprise me, and it's kind of been on his shopping list for a long time. And the interesting thing is that...
I guess every dictator has shopping lists for neighboring countries, right?
Sure. But also after Ukraine, everyone's now thinking Baltics, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, which have kind of huge Russian populations.
Right.
And that will be next.
So tell us about the Crimea. Is it really more Russian than Ukrainian?
Well, it's complicated because originally it was kind of Turkish. It was part of the Ottoman Empire, and it was conquered by Catherine the Great in the late 18th century. And Stalin, of course, deported the peninsula's original inhabitants, who are Muslims. They're Tatars. They're all shipped off to Central Asia, and only came back after the fall of the Soviet Union. So it's multi-ethnic. It's predominantly Russian, but lots of other minorities there: Ukrainians, Tatars, and others. It's not just a Russian.
If you could have an open election in Crimea right now for the people to vote, we're part of Ukraine or we're part of Russia, how would they vote, do you think?
I think they would, because of the inbuilt Russian majority, they would vote for Russia. But you can't have a fair election in this context where the whole peninsula has been occupied, the country's in turmoil, and Putin is sort of staging, demonstrations and events all the time.
Right. What do you think the chances are that Putin will withdraw forces from Crimea?
I think zero. I think effectively he's an ex-Crimea, and it's a new cartographic reality. And there'll be a referendum, in inverted commas, very soon. They'll vote to join Russia or to be Russian protected. Effectively, Crimea has become part of the Russian Federation.
Right. So the Ukraine will continue, but without Crimea.
Yeah, and it'll be a launching pad for Putin to destabilize this new pro-Western government and to threaten it with a big fist. Because obviously he's got a huge amount of military material there. There's a pro-Russian sentiment in the East, and he's kind of won, I would say.
Wow, already.
Already, yeah. And the West hasn't quite woken up to this yet.
But what you said, I mean, I could see Crimea, but boy, it seems to me if he goes after Latvia or Estonia or, that the Baltics, that would really be World War III, but maybe not.
Well, exactly. But there are plenty of ways of doing things short of sending the tanks in.
Yeah.
But this has been a big week for Putin, and at the moment, I think he feels very confident.
And meanwhile, let's talk about Edward Snowden. When did you, at The Guardian, first hear from or know about, or how did this thing all get started with Edward Snowden?
Well, Snowden was sitting in Hawaii, and he reached out to Glenn Greenwald. It didn't work at first.
Why? Glenn Greenwald? Just he knew his reputation?
Yeah, because he was disillusioned with what he regarded as the mainstream media. He didn't like the New York Times. He'd been plotting this kind of mega leak for some time. And he was one of Glenn's readers, essentially. He liked the stuff he'd written on civil liberties. That didn't work. So then he tried Laura Poitras, the filmmaker. That did work, because Laura's very good at encryption. And then this plan was kind of, they were communicating in the spring of last year. And then by May, Snowden was ready to kind of press the button on this leak. And at that point, Glenn talked to my colleague in New York, Janine Gibson, the editor-in-chief of Guardian US, and she sent Glenn and another reporter, Ewan McCaskill, to go and check out this extraordinary source in Hong Kong, and that was Edward Snowden.
Checking it out, that's what I was wondering. I mean, as reporters, right, we always want to, are these people for real? And it's what they have for real. So you were able to do the diligence and get confidence in what he had.
Yeah, I mean,
in him.
Laura was firmly convinced from pretty early on that he was real because she'd had the most dealings with him. Glenn was more skeptical, and Ewan McCaskill, who's the guy who's been kind of written out of this story. He's Scottish. He sounds like Scotty off of Star Trek. He says I rather than yes. But he grew up in Glasgow. He's a highly experienced correspondent. He was the Washington bureau chief. So he went along, and he was the guy whose job it was to do due diligence on Snowden. And what's delightful is that he'd been given a code phrase. If Snowden was real, he had to send a text saying the Guinness is good. So after a day with Snowden, he texted the Guinness is good back to New York. And that was the green light for us to begin this kind of deluge of revelations.
But did you go through all his documents?
Yeah, he brought a lot with him from Hawaii. He was clever. He was strategic. He had a lot of material. He showed passport. He told you in his CIA code name. He told him his backstory, which was a little curious in places because his CV is quite kind of erratic, actually. But I think gradually the whole team, Glenn, Laura, Ewan, became convinced that he was the real deal. And plus, of course, he had the documents.
What was motivating Snowden?
Idealism, I think. I think he was a classic whistleblower. When I was researching my book, I found no evidence that he was a spy or some kind of foreign intelligence operative. He was someone who was upset by what the federal government was doing. He felt the NSA had overreached itself in secret, felt oversight had failed, that people were lying to Congress, and that he had to act. And I think it was a kind of real act of conscience.
It sounds so old-fashioned that we almost don't want to believe it.
It was something kind of 19th century, actually. It was kind of like from the pages of Thoreau or Emerson or just, this whole tradition of civil disobedience. I think he fits right in.
How much was the UK in line with what NSA was doing? I mean,
they were practically one entity. I mean, I've seen the British documents,
exactly.
And we knew they were close, but actually they're like one kind of giant monster with the NSA providing the resources and the manpower and the money, and the UK. The very smart people in NSA, but also smart people in GCHQ as well, the British spy agency. And interestingly, Snowden said in Hong Kong, he said to Ewan said, look, what about the Brits? Have they got a role in this? And Snowden got very angry, or at least, sat up and said, the Brits are more intrusive than the NSA.
So Snowden is in Hawaii when your team first interviewed him, correct?
No. It was in Hong Kong. It was a magical mystery tour.
He had already gone to.
They didn't know who he was. They didn't know if he was genuine. And they didn't know how old he was. But he basically summons these three musketeers to Hong Kong.
To Hong Kong?
Yeah.
So he'd already fled there from Hawaii?
He fled to Hong Kong.
Because he was concerned about getting nabbed?
Well, because he saw what happened to other whistleblowers who went through the system, people like Thomas Drake, for example, and the sky fell on their head. And he decided he was going to do a different kind of play, if you like, different paradigm.
And he could not stay in Hong Kong? Why did he...
Well, of course, a lot happened in Hong Kong. We published these stories. The White House launched a major hunt for him. He checked into this hotel, the Mirror Hotel in Hong Kong, using his own credit card. So he was not a hard guy to find. And so he disappeared. And then, of course, he ends up in Moscow.
Yeah. Because he couldn't fly to...
the plan was for him to go to Latin America. This was a kind of WikiLeaks plan. But most flights, of course, from Hong Kong to Latin America go via the US, which was not an option. And so he routed via Moscow.
And how long is he able to stay in Moscow?
Well... It's
I mean, they kicked you out. They could kick him out, right?
Well, no, but I was an irritant. I was an annoying foreign correspondent who was writing embarrassing stories about Kremlin money. So they kicked me out. Whereas Snowden is completely different. I mean, starting from the premise that he is not a spy, he's a whistleblower, but he's still a major propaganda asset for the Kremlin. And so my sense is that he can stay there, for a long time. And plus, of course, he can't go back to the US.
Right. No, I was, at one point I thought that he had a year. I don't know why.
He does, that's right. He's got a year. So his asylum is up in the summer, but I'm fairly certain it will be renewed.
Well, I have to say, after what we've seen in the last week, or the last few days, I don't think Vladimir Putin's about to send Edward Snowden back to the United States because we ask him to.
He's in no mood for compromise, least of all with America.
Exactly. Just getting started here with a fascinating story of the Snowden files. The author of the book, Luke Harding, here from The Guardian, in the studio with us. Your one chance to make any comments or throw any questions to Luke Harding here at 866-55-PRESS. We'll take a quick break and be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
For more than 18 months, the members of AFSCME 3299 have been working to secure a new contract with the University of California. With workplace injuries at UC skyrocketing and government fines related to safety deficiencies at UC hospitals skyrocketing, Local 3299's top priority has been safe staffing at the workplace.
We've been short of people like for the last 5 years.
They're stretching us thin, which the students are suffering, the faculty suffering, and the patients are suffering.
While UC administrators have granted these standards to other UC workers, they have refused to make similar accommodations for AFSCME represented workers who perform the most physically demanding labor at UC.
It takes a whole team to take care of the patient. It's not just the RN and it's not just the doctor. The nurses were able to win a great contract, and AFSCME workers, the patient care workers and service workers, they're part of the team and they deserve that same fair contract too.
We take pride into working for the university, and we feel like the university doesn't value the work that we do.
But the second-class treatment of AFSCME workers doesn't end at safety and staffing. On wages, benefits, and other issues, UC refuses to offer AFSCME 3299 members the same respect they afford their other workers.
I have 3 jobs because what the university pays me is just not enough to make a living for my family and myself.
99% of service workers in the UC system make so little money that they're eligible for at least some form of public assistance. At the same time, the number of executives in the UC system that have crossed over into making at least $250,000 a year has more than doubled since 2008.
The University of California has long been a beacon of hope and progress for those struggling for dignity and fairness. With such a proud history, it is disturbing to see the leadership of the university treat its lowest paid workers like second-class citizens.
All workers at the university deserve equal treatment.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Biggest story of last year, certainly, Edward Snowden. Snowden Files is the book. It is just out. We have a link up on our website. And, of course, you can get it at Amazon.com or your local bookstore. Luke Harding is the author. He is here doing a little book tour in the United States for this week, and we're very fortunate to have him in studio with us. Luke, thanks again for stopping by. Snowden, we talked about his motive earlier. In terms of, did he choose what to release and what not to release, I guess, of all the information that he had?
Yeah, it's a good question, Bill. He was very strategic. So he said very clearly to the journalists he was working with in Hong Kong that he didn't want everything published, that he wanted to turn this material over to them, for them to exercise their editorial judgment about what should and shouldn't be published. And he was very clear that he didn't want to damage what he viewed as legitimate US intelligence operations. So he didn't want to blow up operations against the Taliban or against the Iranians, but what he did want to do was to lift the lid on what he thought was kind of unconstitutional mass surveillance. So we had a brief, and actually he told us what to look for. He gave us some code names of programs that he was particularly upset by. And now they're all famous. Everyone knows PRISM and Boundless Informant and so on. But of course, back then, they were like gobbledygook. They made no sense, but he sort of pushed us in the right direction.
And you had no doubt that what he was giving you was accurate.
Well, there were some doubts, of course, because no one has seen this kind of material before. They said top secret. It looked like NSA. Some of it, though, was quite kind of amateurish. It looked like sort of very corporate. So there were, of course, some question marks. But we engaged with the White House on the first story and gave them an opportunity to sort of disavow this stuff. And, of course, they didn't because it was real.
They haven't disavowed anything that he released, so far as I know.
They don't like it, but they haven't disavowed it.
Exactly. And have we seen everything that Snowden has to offer?
No.
Any more? Really?
No, I mean, there's a lot of material. We're talking about tens of thousands of documents. I think the kind of core revelations of NSA spying, not just on Americans, but globally, on Europeans, on Brazilians, on everybody, I think we have. So we kind of know a tremendous amount more than we did a year ago.
Sure.
But of course, people are still mining this stuff. Glenn Greenwald has got a new media venture. He's published some good stories. We, The Guardian, did a great story last week about a British program called Optic Nerve, where everybody's web camera images are being captured when they use Yahoo Messenger, which is quite extraordinary. We're talking 1.8 million captures. So there's some more important stuff coming out.
And how did this, a lot of questions about how this young man, relatively way down in the food chain, had access to all of this information.
Well, it's kind of a question for General Alexander, but
I mean, legitimately, he was not cheating to get that access, right? He was given the access, or
well, he was a systems administrator, so he could kind of roam around the system and legitimately look at an awful lot of top secret material, far more than your average analyst would see, because he was the tech guy. There's some question mark as to whether he used the passwords of co-workers. Snowden said he didn't. The NSA said he did. We don't know, but what we do know is that the NSA had no idea that this kind of exfiltration was going on, that their servers were being scraped by 29-year-old guy sitting in Hawaii.
And what harm has been done by Edward Snowden?
Well, that's an important question, and I heard General Alexander speak yesterday in DC saying that these media leaks, as he put them, had caused massive damage to national security.
Yeah, we keep hearing that, but what's the truth?
Right, but there's no evidence for that. At no point has anyone provided any evidence, and we've been extremely careful in what we've published. Before we publish, we've engaged with the White House and the relevant agencies and said, look, if you've got specific security concerns, tell us. And on occasion, we have modified one or two things. We haven't published the names of anybody involved in this. Okay, so we've redacted all of that stuff, and we've been very sensible, just publishing stuff which I think is in the public interest.
So really, probably the biggest harm that damage that they've suffered is mortal embarrassment.
Embarrassment on a massive scale. How could they let this leak happen? Why did they not see it coming? Why do 850,000 Americans have, some of them contractors like Ed Snowden, have access to top secret material? Has the security state got too big? And I think it's embarrassment primarily rather than damage.
Yeah. Well, hopefully to the British government as well. It's interesting. All of our European allies were shocked and alarmed and angry, except for the UK.
Well, the UK was doing the spying almost as a kind of subcontractor for the US. But Bill, there's a serious point here, which is that we came under tremendous pressure from the British government. Last summer, we had to smash up our own computers where we were holding the Snowden files in the basement of the Guardian, because the government basically said, if you don't do that, we're going to injunct you, we're going to take legal action against you. And there's a criminal investigation going on against, we think, journalists who've looked at this stuff. So it's serious.
Yeah, I'll say, what a powerful story, and good for you for being right in the middle of it and bringing that story to us, Luke Harding. It's great to see you. Congratulations again. Snowden Files is the book. Link on our website. Thanks, Luke.
Thanks, Bill. It was great.
This is the Bill Press Show.
In 1920s America, the Great Depression effectively erased consumer demand. Struggling manufacturers needed new ways to get people buying again. Innovative production processes like stamping and use of molds allowed them to use new materials for their designs. Products using vinyl, chrome, aluminium and plywood began appearing. American industrial designers began introducing streamlined, efficient shapes that shouted progress. Bel Geddes pioneered what we now refer to as utilitarian art. Things that had little reason to look sleek, now all of a sudden did. At the 1939 World Fair, featuring Bel Geddes' immensely popular Futurama exhibit, a new era of American industrial design proudly claimed to be building the world of tomorrow. Americans found great positivity in these futuristic forms. Yay. Things were looking up. American industrial designers realised that by making objects look great, people simply wanted them more. From cars to kitchen appliances, the most influential society on earth was spending money again. Mass consumption had arrived. Advertisers finally had lots to talk about. Personal taste could be expressed through the things you bought. Style became equally as important as function. Chair designers like Eames and Saarinen didn't just design seating, they created desirable lifestyles. People behind the products suddenly were stars. Everyone wanted to know who they were. Raymond Loewy was one of the shining lights of American industrial design. His face ended up on every coffee table in the nation. Toothpaste packaging promised whiter teeth. Washing powder packaging promised whiter whites. Who knew such simple household objects would shape the tastes and ambitions of an entire society? American industrial design improved America, functionally, culturally and intellectually, and exported it around the globe.
Hey, like the wedding feast at Cana, we have saved the best wine till last. The best comes up in the show this morning in our third hour with Karl Frisch here from Bullfight Strategies as a friend of Bill, and then Reid Epstein from Politico in studio as well to bring us up to date with all the news of the day, the president's budget, the weather, and some amazing success with marriage equality in state after state. Lots to talk about hour number 3. Stay tuned. Go to our video stream at youtube.com/TawkrTV.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Karl Frisch here as a friend of Bill for the next hour, and joined by Reid Epstein from Politico. President Obama schedule just updated, gets his daily briefing at 10 o'clock this morning. Then he's off to Hartford, Connecticut, meeting with 4 governors up there from New England to talk about the raising the minimum wage, what those governors are doing about it. And then he leaves Hartford to go off to Boston, Massachusetts, where he has an event tonight, fundraiser for the Democratic National Committee. Back to the White House tonight, getting back on the South Lawn at 10 p.m. Jake Carney will meet with reporters on Air Force One. This is the
Bill Press Show. broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Vladimir Putin says, I don't want any more of Ukraine. I'll be happy. Just give me Crimea. That's all I want. No deal, Vlad. Back to your cage. Good morning, everybody. What do you say? It is Wednesday, March 5, Ash Wednesday. Good to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us here, wherever you happen to be in this great land of ours. We welcome you and your local progressive talk radio station, and we welcome you worldwide on our video stream. How about it? TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. Lots to talk about this morning with news that's happening here in Washington, around the country, around the globe. We need some help. We got it from Karl Frisch, friend of Bill here this hour from Bullfight Strategies. Karl, it's good to see you. Welcome back.
Good morning, Bill.
Everything good?
Great.
Yeah, I mean,
it's been a good month. And it's only the 5th.
Yeah, it's been a good 2014 so far,
yeah,
too.
So far, so good.
I think this is the first time we've seen you in the studio.
It is. I guest hosted for you the day after Christmas, and then I've been on my own Christmas vacation
ever since. Right. Good to see you coming in with the largest coffee that I've ever seen in my life. This is Starbucks.
I don't know why I'm holding it up for the camera. They can probably see it from space.
Yeah, right. The big gulp, huh?
Yeah, you can see it on TawkrTV, only on YouTube.
What is that called?
It is called a Trenta. I call it my trucker-sized coffee.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You need a truck to deliver it. Peter Ogburn and Lisa Murphy here with the team.
Hey. Good morning.
Cruz there. There she is, already on the phones, taking your calls at 866-55-PRESS. And we always wave to Cyprian, the videographer, keeping a thing. You got a camera right there. You don't have to turn around. Yeah, right, wherever they are.
It's like London, there's so many cameras.
This is, well, the NSA put them in.
Yeah, right.
Because we had Luke Harding in the last hour to talk about the Snowden book,
Right.
and the NSA tracks him wherever he goes. So they put in 5 more cameras while he was here.
We are so screwed now after having
you know
him
what?
in. You know that.
We
right?
are on the S list.
Yeah.
And I don't mean the short list.
Yeah, I know.
At the NSA from now on.
Yeah.
I'll bet General Alexander is probably going to meet us at the door on the way out.
We need to.
President Underwood is in the wings.
A little interrogation.
Oh shoot! I just had a spoiler alert.
Well, you think today's a big day? Ash Wednesday. Yesterday was a big day, and I'm not talking about Mardi Gras. Yesterday was, of course, Karl, you probably know this, Pancake Day, International Pancake Day, which meant if you
Bill, was that a stab at my weight?
No.
Carl, you know that it's Pancake Day.
That means you like pancakes.
Oh, the only thing you like better than Pancake Day, Carl, is butter and syrup.
Giant coffees.
If you go to IHOP,
yes, Bill, I knew.
You got
I knew.
free pancakes, right? You were there yesterday, of course. David Letterman had a little fun with it last night and telling us all about it.
I want to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care what else is going on. Today is National Pancake Day. Yep.
Yeah.
Have you ever said to yourself, nah, I'm not in the mood for pancakes? No. No one has ever said that. You know, National Pancake Day and National Waffle Day used to be 2 separate days.
I didn't know
But
that.
it was like Lincoln and Washington. They got together and decided to celebrate it on one day. So it's actually Pancake and Waffle Day. Yeah. And I'm telling you something, ladies, wait a minute. If you stayed home from work today because it was National Pancake Day, chances are you are the governor of New Jersey.
Chris Christie can't wait. He even had that surgery, right? And no.
I actually, for one, what's 350 when you were 400? I think he looks better. Although I imagine there's some stress eating going on, and that he'd like to have more than an almond-sized stomach at this point.
Bridge stress.
Yeah, bridge stress, exactly.
You got it. So Karl's here with us as a friend of Bill this entire hour. We'll be joined by Reid Epstein from Politico at the half with lots to get into. But first, Peter with the big stories of the day.
Full Court Press.
A couple of other stories making news. You could use Google to search for a lot of things, and you can add one more item to the list. Menus. You know, if you want to go to a restaurant, you'll sometimes look at the restaurant's website, see what they have on the menu.
Right.
Google is now putting that right into their search engine, so if you search for a restaurant and then the menu, it'll show it now right on Google as part of the search. You don't have to go to the restaurant's website and go through it. Now, it's being powered by allmenus.com, according to lifehacker.com.
This is good.
They're hoping to add more and more resources to it so you get better results.
Kind of takes the fun out of going to a restaurant, right? You don't have any.
Well, for those
looking
of us
at the
that
menu, I'm always looking for
Bill,
surprises.
for those of us that lead a gluten-free, vegan, lactose-free diet, it's important to be able to look this stuff up in advance of a time.
You do not eat at home,
right?
I love looking. I mean, I always like to look and see if they're going to have something that I.
Particularly if you're choosing between a few different places.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
The New York Times issued a correction yesterday, and it took them a while to get around to making that correction. 160 years, to be precise.
What?
They ran a story on it was the original story of Solomon Northup, the man who 12 Years a Slave was based on. When they originally ran the story, January 20th, 1853, they misspelled his name. They spelled it two different ways in the piece, and because of all the attention that the movie has been getting, they went back. Someone pointed out, you spelled his name this way in one point and this way in another. They corrected it. They issued it a correction. 160 years.
Well, thank God. That's been bothering me ever since.
When this mistake was made, it was actually called the brunette lady. It was not the gray lady yet. And, you know, it was only a couple months ago that they corrected a mistake from over 200 years ago with the Roman numerals in the top of the paper. They had skipped a decade. I want to know what guy had no life. And was like, you know what?
Excuse me, I was reading this archive paper from 200 years ago, and it seems to me that you made a horrible mistake.
His middle name is like Roman numerals, you know. Phil Roman numeral Splansky.
Well, thank God their reputation survives, right? They would have been.
Meanwhile, Fox News, you know?
Right. Yeah. Fox News, the lies of the day, right? They don't bother to correct.
No.
Even yesterday.
And how tech-savvy are Americans? A new study conducted by VoucherCloud.net took a look at what Americans know about technology, and it turns out not as much as you'd think. 11% of Americans think that HTML is a sexually transmitted disease.
It can be when done right.
27% of the people that were asked on this study, they identified gigabyte as an insect commonly found in South America. 42% said that they think that a motherboard is the deck of a cruise ship. And my favorite, 23% of the people asked thought that an MP3 was the name of a Star Wars robot.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I saw that story. I identify with the people who don't know what the...
I was going to say, my parents...
You know,
they both have iPhones. They don't have any music on them. They've never downloaded an app, and they don't check their email on it.
But, I mean, HTML? When I saw that yesterday, I had to look up what HTML is. And I'm pretty tech savvy. I mean... Come on.
You want to think about that?
I have a desktop, I have a laptop, I have an iPad, I have an iPhone, and I use them all.
You're right, boss. You're right, boss.
And they all process your paychecks.
Yes, right.
Now, would you like to rethink?
That's right. What am I saying? You're right. You're very tech savvy.
We had a little glitch in the. I'm sorry. This happens to be paycheck week too.
I mean, they don't call me Bill iPress for nothing.
Oh, you know me. I'm not very tech savvy. Whoops! I lost your paycheck this week on the computer.
Yeah. Too bad. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gigabytes to you.
Gigabyte me. Oh man, there's nothing like a good technology pun to get up in the morning.
Oh man.
Now, Karl, you congratulations. I just want to ask you. So how long has it been? We always talk about your former smoking habit.
Yeah, I'm not a smoker anymore.
No.
9 months. Monday was 9 months. And I believe I told you off air the week that I had quit. I quit smoking, and you're like, okay, Karl, all right.
We'll see
and
how long
it's been
it lasts,
9 months, and
Good for you.
It's going so
Seriously.
well that I didn't even realize it had been 9 months.
All right, here's what I want to know is, though, are you into e-cigarettes?
No. That's smoking.
Oh.
Here's the deal. If you want, I think they're a lot healthier than regular cigarettes because there's not all those chemicals in it, but it's still continuing your nicotine addiction. I think ultimately studies will find that people who smoke e-cigarettes are more likely to go back to regular cigarettes. The other thing is, if you're using them to quit, unlike the lozenge or the patch or the gum or the inhalers, there's no way to guarantee that every time you use your e-cigarette, you're getting the same amount of nicotine. Because just like a regular cigarette, everybody's draw on a cigarette is different. You get, everybody pulls in a different amount each time. And the other thing is, you're not picking out one e-cigarette at a time. You've got one e-cigarette. So you're not smoking 20 in a pack. You're just smoking one. So I think ultimately we're going to have some very interesting findings from science. And I would encourage anybody who is going to give up smoking, if they think, if they're not going to give up smoking, go ahead and smoke the e-cigarette. It's probably healthier for you because it's a lot better to have just an addiction to nicotine than all the other chemicals that go along with it. But don't fool yourself that it's quitting.
But the new trend is people are not, people who use them, right, don't call them e-cigarettes because that indicates that they really are like cigarettes. They're calling them hookah pens or e-hookahs or vape pipes, and you're not smoking, you're vaping.
I want to slap every one of the people that say that. I mean,
vaping.
The people that smoke
Hookah
them
pipes.
often remind me of the people that ride Segways. They look around to make sure that you see them.
You just tapped into.
Don't start me on Segways, man. I hate them.
Yeah, me too.
I hate them.
But you notice the people that ride them, they ride down the middle of the street, and they're constantly looking to the left and the right to make sure that everybody else sees that they're riding a Segway. People that smoke the e-cigarettes, I'm sorry, the e-hookah,
yes,
are the same way.
Don't you just want to knock? I want to knock people down on Segways. I just want to go.
And they always travel in packs.
They do. Yeah. No, I hate them. I see them in front of the White House, and all right, boy. Don't get me started. All right, Kentucky. We the movement. I mean, honestly, did you ever think that the movement toward marriage equality in this country would go as fast as it has?
I didn't think there would ever be marriage equality. When you're, thankfully, I'm probably the last generation of kids that grew up never even thinking about marriage. When I was growing up, you just thought that maybe you'd get a boyfriend or a girlfriend one day. You never thought about the prospect of getting married and having a family because that wasn't part of the story that we were told, right? First of all, we'd lost an entire generation of gay men to AIDS, so there were not a lot of role models out there. And second of all, there were no legal recognitions of relationships. I went to high school. Ellen hadn't even come out on television yet. So in the short time, I mean, just remember, in 2000, Howard Dean signed civil unions into law in Vermont, and it was extremely controversial to the point at which the liberal people of Vermont didn't support him by 50% on that issue.
Whoa.
Within a couple years, of course, it was up to 75% popularity.
Right.
But marriage, 10 years ago in 2003 rather, we had one state with marriage equality. It's now, we're up upwards of plus, 17 with several decisions pending. And
right. And now we have Oklahoma and Utah with decisions pending, and
Virginia and Texas decisions pending.
And Texas and Kentucky yesterday with the Attorney General of Kentucky, Jack Conway. Here he is. We're going to hear him here, where he said, "We have this ban against same-sex marriage, and I, as Attorney General, will not enforce it." Jack Conway.
As Attorney General of Kentucky, I must draw the line when it comes to discrimination.
And other attorney generals have said the same thing.
Well, who started that trend is your buddy Jerry Brown, the now governor of California, and of course Kamala Harris maintained that decision. Eric Holder came out about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago, and said, "Look, if you're an attorney general, it's perfectly fine not to defend these state bans because they do conflict with our Constitution." So it's good to see Conway making this decision. I was excited when he became Attorney General. He'd been a congressional candidate at one point, and he was a very compelling candidate. And I think this is another example of why elections matter.
But you see, good point. I thought that when I saw this happening, that okay, we're going to get up to like 21 states, maybe. But the 29 states, I think it is, or however many that have the Constitution,
Right.
and a lot of that was in 2004, again,
Right.
10 years ago, in 11 states in November.
And now you've got Republicans complaining about Democrats using marriage equality as a social issue to win elections.
Yeah, right.
But you're right.
So I thought we'd get to the states that don't have a constitutional ban, but they would be just like impossible to overturn. Little did I think that in those states, judges would overthrow them.
Right.
And attorneys general would refuse to defend them. And
I
so
think we're
they're
now
going to
up
fall.
to-
They're going to fall as well.
So last year, I think it was something like 12 states became marriage equality states. It was an absurdly high number. And I was like you, I thought, well, 2014 is going to be a little disappointing for the movement.
Yeah.
It's going to be very slow going, maybe one or two. New Mexico didn't have anything on the books. I thought maybe we'd get a couple others. But these federal judges in state after state after state, and by the way, there's also, I think, 20 other cases pending that haven't been decided. You've got one in Michigan that's being heard right now. Not a single one of these federal cases has been lost by the marriage equality side. And the anti-equality side is getting more and more desperate. And that's where you see things like these Arizona pieces of legislation being attempted. What they don't realize is that they're actually hastening their demise with pushes to do these kinds of things. Because one of the signature issues at hand in these cases about marriage equality is the reason that these bans were pursued in the first place. And the contention is that they were pursued because of animus against the gay community. And they're trying to argue, the anti-gay people are trying to argue that that's not the case. This was just about giving children the best chance. Well, when the exact same people are pursuing bills to make it perfectly legal to discriminate against gay people in public accommodations, you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth, and we're not stupid.
Wow. Karl Frisch here. As a friend of Bill from Bullfight Strategies, your questions, your comments, welcome. 866-55-PRESS. Maybe you're in one of those states where the cases are pending, or maybe you're just trying to get something started in your state. Give us a call. We'll be right back here on this Wednesday edition of the Bill Press Show.
This is the Bill Press Show. is the Bill Press Show.
Reid Epstein from Politico is going to be joining us in the next half hour here with Karl Frisch from Bullfight Strategies. I'm looking forward to Reid coming in. We're going to go through the federal budget, the president's budget, line by line.
Oh, good.
Isn't that good?
Is he bringing it in?
Yes, and we'll vote on each item.
I heard John Boehner's putting it up for a vote tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
I mean, if we're just going to keep lying, Bill.
Just a little bit left. But what do you think about these Republicans who are out there, Lindsey Graham and John McCain, blaming Barack Obama because Vladimir Putin invaded Crimea?
I think they're onto something.
Really?
I have decided that I'm going to start blaming Reagan and George H.W. Bush for breaking up the Soviet Union, because had they not done that, we wouldn't be here right now.
Do you know what? I think you're onto something.
Right. Yeah.
If there
Logic.
If there were still a Soviet Union, Ukraine would be part of it.
Right.
Crimea would be part of it.
We'd still be able to call it the Ukraine if it was still part of the Soviet Union.
Yes, and they'd all be Soviets, right? So why don't I?
Actually, I just say split them in half. Give half of them to Western Europe and give half of them to Russia.
The more you think about it, the more you can blame just about everything on Ronald Reagan, can't you?
Yes. And that's not a joke.
Exactly. Rightfully so.
This is the Bill Press Show. Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hey, what do you say 33 minutes after the hour? Here we go, Wednesday morning, March 5. Trouble, now double trouble. Karl Frisch here is a friend of Bill this hour from Bullfight Strategies, joined now by Reid Epstein. He and I work together down at the White House. He covering the White House for Politico. Reid, good to see you. And a neighbor here from Capitol Hill.
Yes.
All right.
I hope your sidewalk is shoveled.
In front of my house?
In front of your house?
Haven't you walked by it? I want to know. I was out there Monday myself.
All by yourself?
He doesn't live in a city building.
That's
no, right.
All city-owned property, by the way, doesn't have to ever apparently.
And
clean
for
its sidewalks.
a while, Reid, there, in front of our house was the only part of our sidewalk.
Oh, it's very
that block.
So,
that
how many times Monday did you have to go out? Because it snowed a lot during the course of the day.
I personally only went out once.
Does that mean your wife went out and shoveled the other times?
All I'm saying is I personally went out only once.
He's helping to grow the economy.
You know, if you have one of these radio shows, you can hire people apparently to go and shovel.
If I were a good neighbor, I would have shoveled the entire block. Right? But
this isn't a Norman Rockwell painting.
I just wanted to take care of the lawsuits in front of my house.
You know, these guys from California are weak when it starts to snow.
Tell me I'm from California too.
Weak and indecisive. I invite aggression. That's what, right. So, Reid, you were up early yesterday morning, we hear, and getting the first copies of the president's budget. How exciting.
Sometimes the job is very glamorous, and sometimes you're at a Starbucks at 6:15 waiting for someone to show up with a CD.
At the Starbucks? Is that where they give
Starbucks near the White House.
Whoa.
It is just like it is on House of Cards. I swear, it's so exciting.
Is there anything there we should be excited about?
In the budget?
Yeah.
No. I think
$3.9 trillion, and you couldn't find anything exciting?
Well, I mean, there's stuff in the budget that's interesting, but this budget, usually the budgets are dead on arrival. This year's budget was dead before arrival. And it was, you could tell from the short event that the president did yesterday. He was at a public school in Northwest D.C.
Which is strange in and of itself, I thought.
But it was almost as even President Obama didn't want to talk about the budget. He wanted to talk about Ukraine. And it's usually when he has these types of sort of staged events, he gets up, he does his thing, he walks away, and that's the show. It's very rare for him to go off topic, let alone invite questions. And so he did his little 4-minute spiel on the budget, which was essentially everything that you've heard in the State of the Union and in a dozen speeches since then. And then he invited a question from the press, which was sort of astonishing for those of us who watch him on a day in and day out basis.
Right. Yeah.
This is somebody who wants nothing to do with taking questions from the press. But in this case, Ukraine has been the dominant story this week. He clearly wanted to talk about it. John Kerry was at the same time at our embassy in Kiev, discussing the situation and knocking the Russians. And the president turns to the press and says, "Okay, Mike, do you have a question?" to the Bloomberg correspondent. And so he got the Putin question, and then he talked twice as long about the situation in Ukraine as he had just had delivering his budget statement.
Well, maybe if they'd asked him about his budget, they would have gotten a lot more. I don't disagree that the budget is dead on arrival, or dead before arrival, stillborn. I do think, though, that these budgets are extremely important.
They are policy documents.
And there's something for the Democrats to talk about as they run for re-election or run to challenge Republicans. And that is a populist tone with investments in infrastructure, with investments in schools and families and all the other things that sound popular to the American people. And one of the most important things is no cuts to Social Security. I can't imagine how much more difficult it would have been for Democrats to be campaigning in 2012 with a stated administration policy of caving and cutting Social Security. 2010 was a bad year for Democrats in no small part to the posture of the White House being conciliatory before they needed to with the Republicans.
Well, it was interesting that they're not even going with the pretense of offering some sort of an olive branch to the Republicans on this. Last year,
which different than previous Obama budgets.
Right. Last year, the change CPI was sort of the reductions of the rates of increases
Cuts to benefits.
To benefits. Well, not necessarily cuts to benefits, but slowing the rate of growth of the benefits as opposed to keeping them on the same line that they have.
I think it's easy for reporters and policy analysts to say that it's not really a cut to benefits, but to a senior living on a fixed income, it's a cut to benefits.
But the point is, Reid's point is, this was something the Democrats hated and Republicans wanted it. And then the White House didn't get anything for it, so they get
beaten
basically
with the olive branches that they put out there.
Right. Well, that's really sort of what the news is out of this budget, is that that they're no longer interested in pretending to compromise or make a deal. And because there's already the Ryan Murray 2-year spending agreement is already out there, there's really no need for them to be conciliatory or compromise in this budget, since it's not something that they're going to be running around waving as, touting specific things in it. And it's and they're not going to get a deal with Republicans anyway this year, so why even bother?
Right. So in a sense, this is the president saying, in an ideal world, here are my priorities, and here are the things that I think I want to spend money on, and we should be spending money on, right?
Yes.
Whether or not it actually happens, it provides...
The Democrats can hit the campaign trail, right, saying they're blocking votes, they're not allowing us to fund this or build this bridge or do that or do this. I mean,
but there will not be a vote in
up or down
in the House for sure, and certainly not
of
the
any
Senate
substance
of any substance on this budget. It's not going to come up. Senate Democrats don't want to vote on it
or any important.
So he spent more time talking about the Ukraine yesterday. Let's spend more time talking about the Ukraine yesterday.
Well, actually, you can't say the Ukraine anymore. They get very upset.
The Ukraine. That's right. Ukraine.
Just Ukraine.
That was under the Soviet Union.
We had
half of the country gets really upset, if I'm not mistaken.
We had a very stern note from our copy desk at Politico saying, no, you can't call it the Ukraine. It's just Ukraine.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I stand corrected. Let's talk about Ukraine. I've been there, by the way. Is there any way to get Putin out of Ukraine, out of Crimea?
Not really. There's a way, and it would be sending, fighter jets and U.S. troops in.
Maybe.
That's not going to. Maybe that would work. It's certainly not going to happen. President Obama, if we have learned one thing about him, is that he has a very strictly and stridently non-interventionist foreign policy.
But even his critics among Republicans, I've not heard anybody suggest military action.
No, and it's sort of similar to
unless I missed it.
No, and essentially no one serious has suggested military action, and even sort of the unserious members of Congress aren't suggesting military action. But it's like Syria, where the president sort of has talked a big game, not quite as big a game as he talked about Syria, but he talked about consequences. We've seen some of that in sort of the economic sphere. There's certainly been talks of sort of trying to put together different types of embargoes on Russia, visa bans for some of Putin's cronies. But they're not going to go in with troops into Crimea, and that's at this moment seems like the only thing that Putin will respect.
It's almost like, in fact, I've seen some European allies, some of our European allies have almost recognized that, okay, he's got Crimea, as long as he doesn't take anything else, we could live with that.
I think we need some international gerrymandering. Split the country in two, let half of it be self-identified with Western Europe, let the other half identify with the Russians. I don't see what the path out of the situation is. I'd be interested to know your take on how this kind of unravels, not to use a loaded term, but I heard or read that Russia had taken a big hit in the markets, and then also that some of the troop movements that we were seeing may have been pulled back. I don't know what to make of it.
Well, if you listen to what the White House said yesterday and sort of read between the lines a little bit, it seemed like they were more optimistic about what was going on, especially late in the day yesterday when they put a readout of the president's call with the German Chancellor Merkel. It seemed, and what we were hearing from folks at the White House was that they were, that Merkel was looking for an off-ramp, was the word that they kept using for Putin to take to get out of some of this, get the Russian troops out without being embarrassed himself.
Or maybe pull the Russian troops back to Russian bases inside of Crimea. So therefore, that are already there. Well, the big question, though, is who do we blame for Putin? Whose fault is it that Putin invaded Ukraine? And we know whose fault it is. In fact, the wisest person in the Republican Party on foreign policy that everybody turns to for enlightenment and leadership was on with Sean Hannity Monday night, and here's her take.
Look, people are looking at Putin as one who wrestles bears and drills for oil. They look at our president as one who wears mom jeans and equivocates and bloviates. We are not exercising that peace through strength that only can be brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
Now, this is Sarah Palin, who can see Russia from her front porch, Reid. So
she said in 2008, echoing McCain, that Ukraine would be next if there weren't consequences to Putin essentially seizing parts of Georgia.
We know
parts of Georgia who was in the White House?
When George Bush was in the White House.
Yeah, right.
And that's really that's a bit of it. It's a very similar situation in that Putin threatens and sort of steals some territory from his neighbor. It's different in that the Georgian president instigated that incident against the strong advice of the U.S. and the West. And so there was some sense at the moment, at least in Washington and in Western Europe, that he got what came to him by poking at the bear.
And he lost 2.
Well, and let's be clear about what Sarah Palin is saying there. She's saying that, and this is perfect.
Do we have to be clear about what Sarah Palin is saying?
Well, this is interesting.
No, can you possibly?
This
can you
is perfect
be clear?
as an analogy, or not an analogy, but just an extrapolation of what the Republican Party is these days. It is this false bravado, this false macho that they've got going on, where you've got to be tough, but not really tough. If our president was only rustling bears and riding horseback with bare-chested, at the end of the day, ultimately, I don't think it matters what Sarah Palin says, and it's her 15 minutes are just about up as far as I'm concerned.
You know what? It's hard to believe that she actually was a candidate for vice president.
She was governor for like a year and a half.
That's right. I take it back.
I gotta say though, I would pay to watch Obama wrestle a bear. I don't know. I feel like we could pass the hat and get
maybe bail out the budget
and get a pay-per-view special to watch Obama wrestle bears.
But you're not going to see him ride a horseback bare-chested. I'll tell you that. At least not for the next 3 years. We've got Reid, Epstein, and Karl Frisch here. Join the party. Join the fun at 866-55-PRESS. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show. on your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Here we go, 11 minutes before the top of the hour. Winding up this Wednesday on the news of the day with Reid Epstein. Covers the White House for Politico. And Karl Frisch here from Bullfight Strategies in the entire hour as a friend of Bill. Karl, good to have you around. So, Reid, the president is going off on the road today. We're not finished with the Ukraine. We'll come back to that. But going off on the road today, meeting with 4 governors up in Hartford, Connecticut, including Governor Daniel Malloy, who's been one of the leaders among governors, saying, as governors, we can do a lot to raise the minimum wage. I guess that's the only place the president maybe can hope for any action, right?
In New England, right?
Well, not in the Congress, at least.
Right, and Malloy's actually been a really good ally for the president on a host of things. If you remember, on gun control after Newtown, Connecticut got some sort of incremental pieces of gun control laws passed when the president, of course, couldn't. And now Malloy and a couple other governors are going to meet with the president and essentially do a rally on minimum wage, which probably will be little noticed outside of the Hartford media market and the White House reporters traveling with the president because, like we talked about before, everyone's still focused on what's going on in Ukraine. But this is really what you're going to hear from the president from now until November. It's going to be the sort of the central campaign premise for Democrats up and down the ticket that Republicans are blocking things that will help the middle class economically. The president's this is really the centerpiece of the president's agenda. They're going to be talking about the minimum wage much more than they're going to be talking about Obama himself.
That's going to be the core message of Democrats, isn't it?
And again, that's why I think
the governor's races, the Senate races, and the House races.
The budget document does serve a good purpose, and that is defining for Democrats where they stand and what they would do if they had control over everything. And obviously, it's a lot easier to strike out that difference when a budget document is more aggressive, and I think that's why we see it this way.
Speaking about Ukraine, Janice is calling from out in Chicago on WCPT. Hi, Janice. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a question about Ukraine and what has happened there. We have a history of backing the wrong people and arming the wrong insurgents. Is this a real movement of the street, or was it a coup d'etat against an elected government?
I think that's an excellent question. Putin called it a coup yesterday. It was an elected government.
I think it was probably both. I think it is both.
But it seemed to me a legitimate protest.
Both a movement of the street and a coup. But like Karl was saying, there's a real divide in Ukraine between the people who want to be focused more towards the West and towards Europe and the people who more identify with Russia. And it's geographical, it's ethnic. It seems a little difficult to see how this doesn't devolve into some sort of a civil war between East and West within Ukraine.
Right.
But you had, it goes back hundreds of years. But in recent history, in 2004, there was a revolution where the European-minded Ukrainians took power. They were not very good at actually running the government. And in 2010, Yanukovych, who was more Russian-minded, won an election, threw a bunch of the European-minded people in jail. And 4 years later, people were sick of him, and there was a sort of another revolution again.
But Karl, I mean, to me, what I just was observing it, this was not like Syria where the opposition is really kind of split, and there's some good guys and bad guys. I mean, I think in the Ukraine, these were all citizens who wanted, as Reid said, a different direction, huh?
And I mean, you got to underscore the difference in the way that people would think. I mean, if you were basically a country of two mindsets, where one mindset is very much with Western Europe and the other mindset is very nationalistic in its support of Russia, those are very different worldviews. It's not surprising that there's not been stability there since the Soviet Union disbanded, when you've got such just loggerhead worldviews at play here.
Well, I think it's refreshing what happened, and this new government. European Union gave him $15 billion a day. John Kerry, just $1 billion yesterday. But and I think there'll be more. Peter Welsh told us earlier from Congress that the Congress is going to definitely vote some more aid for.
Well, the EU wants Ukraine, and that's part of why Russia's ticked off.
Yeah, so maybe we just give them Crimea and take the rest, and everybody saves face. I don't know. We can't sort it out anymore because we're out of time. Reid, Epstein, good to see you.
Thanks, Bill.
All right. Thanks so much for coming in. Karl, fun to have you here as a friend of Bill. Come back again soon. And I'll be back and wrap things up just a second.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hey friends, do you realize that heart disease kills more Americans every year than all forms of cancer combined? So when you donate to the American Heart Association, you're contributing to life-saving research with every dollar. You can make your donation today through the Pop Money personal payment service. All you do is download the app or go online to popmoney.com. Sign up to send your donation to jessica.gramillion@heart.org. Jessica.gramillion@heart.org. Here's the best part. The 95-cent fee is assessed to you, the sender, regardless of how much money you contribute. That means that 100% of your donation goes to support the ongoing research to help save lives across America. No fees are paid by the American Heart Association, getting more bang for your buck. And of course, terms and conditions apply.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Oh, so much to talk about today. We even ran out of time for a parting shot. Let's just say there's some important events today. President Obama again talking minimum wage with Governor Daniel Malloy of Connecticut and 3 other New England governors. We'll keep our eye on that. And then very, very importantly, Secretary of State John Kerry meeting in Paris with the Russian foreign minister today. And hopefully they can find what people are calling an off-ramp for Vladimir Putin and resolve this international crisis in Crimea. Whatever happens, we'll wrap it up and talk about it all right here tomorrow morning. So go out and have a good Wednesday, and we'll look for you in the morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.